Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, sponsored by DBSync, we are talking about data integration and its role in some of today's most important real-life business application scenarios. My guests, Connor Evans and Avinash Rao of DBSync, share their observations about current investments in integration technology for the modernization of ERP, field service, e-commerce, and more. They share some recent real-world project scenarios in the Dynamics space, discuss the role of data integration solutions alongside Power Platform, and offer some project management tips. All right, I'm here with Connor and Avinash from DBSync. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, thanks. Really appreciate it, Jason. It's good to join.
Thanks, Jason. Likewise.
Why don't we start with some introductions? Avinash, could you tell us a little more about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thanks one and all. This is Avinash. I'm one of the senior engineers at DBSync. I've been with the company for a little over 10 years now. Got to pinch myself. Yeah, I work in the capacity as director for professional services. I oversee all service engagements across all our product lines. And I'm also responsible for, building these cookie cutter or pre-built solutions that you see on our website across various integration platforms. In my tenure, we've collectively sort of delivered over 1,000 plus integration projects across, systems and business, ecosystems alike. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Great, thanks. And hey, Connor.
Hey, yeah, so a little bit about myself. I'm the head of the Microsoft division at DBSync. I've been helping Dynamics customers find the appropriate integration solution for a little over 5 years now. That looks like a lot of different things for different folks. It includes everything from legacy Dynamics CRM prior to the advent of 365 to Dynamics GP or Dynamics Nav integrations. And a little bit about DBSync, Avinash mentioned there, we've been around this integration space for a little over a decade now. And we've been automating a ton of different business processes between pretty much every type of application you can think of.
All right, excellent. I mean, I have to say on a personal note, integration's been one of my personal favorite elements of the IT field, all the way, going back, 20 years now. So I'm really excited to talk to you and kind of get a sense of where you're looking today and what you're seeing. And why don't we set the stage just to start things off with kind of your view of the integration landscape overall. Can you give a sense for our listeners of how you see things overall?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting point in time to be talking about this, right? I mean, if you look at Dynamics as a platform, just the growth has been exponential. You look at things like Business Central, it now has over 15,000 customers and it's seeing 200% annual growth. You look at different applications like in the e-commerce world, Shopify has over 2 million users. You look at, even legacy accounting applications like QuickBooks, that has over 4 million users. And what's really interesting is you talk to folks at different businesses and in different organizations, and they're all using a mixed bag of applications and databases. And there's really this huge need to connect all of these different platforms because let's face it, you might have someone who does need a CRM and is looking at Dynamics for customer engagement, but their accounting staff absolutely refuses to get off of QuickBooks. And that's a really common scenario that we come across. And so, you need tools that are bridging the gap in a way that, you're just not able to get with some of these other platforms that are out there. Or, you might need more detail or depth than you're getting out of, trying to do these integrations in the Dataverse.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. And that kind of scenario sounds familiar. It almost seems to me like the integration plan, it almost needs to exist sort of alongside a journey of application modernization. Is that a way that you see organizations approaching it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, the connectivity is such a crucial thing because data is everything. If your data isn't usable, if there's inaccuracies, if you're doing manual double data entry in multiple systems and you don't have a unified data set, your systems can't operate, in a way that's going to be beneficial to your business. So I think it's really a larger conversation around making sure you have data integrity amongst all of your different systems so that you can use your systems to the best of their ability.
And who needs these types of integration? Could you maybe give an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So the broad answer is anyone who's using, multiple systems that don't have an ability to communicate with each other. But if we want to go in depth, I think an example is probably the best way to highlight something like this. So let's talk about something I mentioned earlier, which is someone who's using Dynamics 365 for sales as their CRM, and they're using QuickBooks as their accounting software. And it's pretty straightforward in this use case, right? The integration is going to be for anyone using both of those applications who needs to get their data in and out of each of them and make sure they're talking and communicating with accurate data. So when folks are using Dynamics and QuickBooks, a pretty common set of challenges that needs to be addressed. So for one, they're likely managing their leads and sales pipeline in Dynamics, leveraging the opportunities entity. And at a certain point, those opportunities are going to be marked as closed won. And with any integration, without any integration, it's really an entirely manual process wherein you're going to need to send that information to your accounting staff and have them rekey it into QuickBooks. And that not only takes a ton of time itself, but it's going to lend itself to errors. And as we mentioned earlier, that data integrity is really the most crucial thing to have in place if you're going to be using systems like CRM and accounting software. So if you think about how many opportunities for data entry errors there are over the course of like a week with just 10 invoices, well, that's 10 customers with all their information. It's 10 products at least. It's 10 or more line items at least. And if you multiply it over the course of a year, we find that folks end up spending more time trying to catch and fix errors when they're doing this process manually than they do actually entering the information itself. So an ideal solution and outcome for someone like this would be, when companies come to us, most of the time they want to get their opportunity and order data out of Dynamics and into QuickBooks. This needs to be done in a way that is totally automated so that as many human touch points are reduced as possible. And that saves them an enormous amount of time, both between that double data entry and, not having to fix errors related to it. And that's time that, folks can now spend focusing on growing their business and doing the activities that actually matter to their revenue.
One of the things in the Microsoft space that you might hear, or maybe you can give me an example, is, well, should we go with an ISV solution versus maybe trying to use some of Microsoft's native business applications, services like Power Automate, other elements of Power Platform? What do you say to that?
Yeah, and it's a very valid and fair point, right? Power Automate's great at automating, different tasks, setting up different data sets that you might want to integrate, things like that. And in integration with an ISV, I'd say is in addition to Power Automate. And where they can't help, that's where we likely can. Integration expertise doesn't necessarily exist within the Microsoft ecosystem itself. They're just too big of an organization and they don't want to support them. Microsoft isn't going to go out of their way to support a QuickBooks integration if, they're focusing on getting all the, customers on Business Central. So that's where we can step in and really provide that expertise in transactional data integration. That again is a huge difference, right? When we start talking about transactional data, this is highly sensitive data that you need to make sure is accurate when you're integrating, your CRM and your accounting software. So if you're interested in implementing an integration, you really have two options. And the first one is you could do it yourself. And you may or may not even really have the technical resources in your company. Not everyone has like a developer in-house. And if you don't, you're going to have to hire someone. And that is a pretty massive expense. Now, beyond just the development, you're going to need a QA resource for testing. On top of that, you're going to need, someone to provide maintenance with these types of integrations, and all of those technology providers that we've touched on. They're constantly updating their software and their APIs. Microsoft is rolling out updates all the time, and that process of getting up and running alone usually takes about 6 months to a year. Which, when you A/B that with using an already built integration solution from an ISV, it's a world of difference. And really, when you work with an ISV, the idea is hopefully you're going to get up and running within a matter of days or weeks. And, it just depends on how complex and customized that integration is. But this is done at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the time. So you'd be able to, rely on someone whose expertise is entirely in this integration space. And then, of course, for ongoing support, you've got a partner that you can really rely on.
Yeah, I don't think you can really understate the importance of having that long-term support. I think a lot of people can get two systems to talk to each other, in an initial effort. But, if something does stop communicating, having that trusted source to turn to is really invaluable.
Absolutely. If something goes wrong and you've hired a developer to do it in-house and that developer's left the company to move on to other opportunities and you don't have a resource who really understands the platform that you built in-house, you're kind of left stranded. And these are real scenarios that people face, and we've encountered where, folks have built in-house integrations and then come to us and said, look, we can't even, support or troubleshoot our own integration. We need an integration partner to help us so that this is never a problem we have to face again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any real world examples of maybe some of the scenarios or some of the challenges that we've talked about here?
Yeah, of course. So if we're talking like from a customer perspective, because we work both with customers and partners, one that comes to mind is National Maintenance and Construction. So if you check out our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see we've got an actual customer interview with them. We like to provide interviews and references right out in the public, so you can check out these different use cases coming from the customer's mouth itself. But they were a Dynamics 365 field service user, and they were already using QuickBooks. So during that implementation process for field service, they came to us and they said, look, we've tried a few different solutions, and we realized that they weren't going to be able to handle the scale of the integration that they needed. So using DBSync, we were able to build a system to integrate their accounting with their field service instance. And that included things like customer integration and invoices, and also vendors and bills. And that's all coming from Dynamics to QuickBooks. But beyond that, having the ability to see those bill payments happening in QuickBooks in Dynamics, really just giving them a full view of their data, regardless of if we're having, sales staff using Dynamics needing to see the status of their accounts, or if we're having the accounting staff being able to see those incoming invoices and bills. So as a result, we were able to get them up and running in about 2 weeks. And that includes, building the integration and testing, because we do have these pre-built solutions that we leverage. And on top of that, they're saving on average about 25 hours a week in that reconciliation and data entry. And that's just a huge improvement in their overall operational accounting efficiency. So that's what it looks like when we're working with a customer. Now, when we're working with a partner, it's a little different. And we work with a ton of partners. I know your audience has a lot of Dynamics partners. So if any of you are interested to hear what it might be like working with us, one example that comes to mind is Tecman. They're a Dynamics partner out of the UK. And they actually came to us with the need to integrate Business Central and Shopify. They had quite a few different customers that had this need. So we were able to train them on how to use the DBSync platform and implement these integrations for their customers on their own. And beyond that, we really helped them set up that initial profile for Shopify order, customer, and products integration. So now they're able to onboard as many customers as they want moving forward entirely on their own. And Avinash, maybe this is a good place for you to talk a little bit about how we can train our partners to do these integrations.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Particularly with this partner in focus, which is Tecman. Now, normally what we do is we do have a predefined way to go about training partners. We would start off with as if we are doing this integration. Maybe we let's say there are multiple integration points. We go about implementing one of these integration points ourselves, and then sort of involve the partner and walk them through as to why certain design patterns are used the way they are, because there's most of the integration architecture won't change when you're dealing with multiple systems. There are certain intricacies which is related to DBSync alone. In those scenarios, following certain patterns really help. While we have these pre-built cookie cutter solutions and documentation and videos to go through, we still do the initial hand holding, which is so much more essential. It kind of speeds up things thereafter. And we do this also with customers wanting to learn. we provide them a sandbox instance also. And so they can actually take a stab at it and do it on their own if they're willing to. So we follow the same, process with our partners also.
Interesting. Yeah. And I've always thought that, resellers in the Microsoft business application space, I mean, it just seems like they absolutely should have some of these competencies in their back pocket at all times, because I mean, how many partners haven't run into a scenario where there's an ERP to e-commerce type of integration need that they should be able to help their clients meet? So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Can you talk about any other of the integration best practices that you like to focus on?
Yeah, look, anytime you're moving data from point A to point B, first thing, we need to understand that no two systems are alike. And hence, there are certain best practices that, one needs to adhere to. Normally, it won't change too much. Now, even before we get to best practices, there's a lot of experience that comes when integrating multiple systems. Obviously having API knowledge of these systems is a given, but what is sort of overlooked is having a functional understanding what the UI looks like, what the dependencies are, and etc. That is something we take into the account. And secondly, we also make sure the discovery is done really, really well. It's a cliched statement. Knowing what to do is everything, because once you know what needs to be done, how the data needs to move, then it becomes that much more easier. It's almost 50-60% of the entire project, right? So documenting these requirements is paramount, right? And then we go about looking at the systems involved. Are we looking at cloud systems only? Take example Business Central and then maybe QuickBooks Online or Shopify. Now these are all cloud systems. Then it's only a matter of knowing these APIs. Is it REST APIs or SOAP APIs? Then how do we go about architecting these systems? And there are other scenarios where cloud and on-premise systems are involved. Think of a scenario you are having to integrate your Shopify with your Dynamics GP or Dynamics Navision, where you have these WSDLs involved and even databases sometimes. There, how do you go about architecting in these integrations? It's normally not just two systems involved. Sometimes there are more than two systems, 3 or 4 systems involved. So how do you define your master data or system of record, right? Where the first keying in of data is happening. Then, you sort of architect in a way where one system takes precedence over the other for the insert, and then all the incremental updates, going back and forth. So these are we define the master data or system of record, and then we go from there. So this is obviously, the other one of the rules that we follow. And then we sort of chalk out what are the possible operational pitfalls, right? The data quality. We look at data quality across the board, right? And then start adding validations, accordingly, while we're implementing it. So that is data quality and data standardization is another aspect of integration, which is really, really important to ensure a seamless data transfer across, multiple systems involved. Then, we go about, once you're done with this, we ensure that there is a sign off on all the integrations that is happening and all the use cases or test cases that we go through. We call them as UATs, as you would know. While these are not so different compared to any project, but it is with regards to QA, it becomes that much more important with integration, because what happens is you have all these different processes across multiple systems. If something breaks somewhere, who gets blamed? The integrator. So integration quality control is slightly different compared to other quality QA with other projects. So we ensure we get a sign off on the test cases, and it is also we go through it in the sandbox. So having a test environment or a sandbox environment helps. And then we also make sure when we are going live, we go live and provide implementation support. This is post go live. So why implementation support is required? So imagine a scenario where a partner is implementing it, or maybe we have implemented it. So the folks involved, like a business analyst or the developer, they actually know the system quite well. So they are involved during, that is why we give 1 week of post go live support. That is from the implementation team before they are actually being transitioned to standard support. So these are some best practices that we follow to the T.
All right. Anything else you would leave our listeners with in terms of recommendations for anyone looking at an integration for their own organization, maybe for clients?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for an integration, or if you're curious about whether the integration you have in mind is even possible, I suggest you head over to our website. That's mydbsync.com. mydbsync.com. And you can hop on chat, and we're happy to answer questions. You can shoot us an email. If you want to hop on a call with me, we can do that too. We like to get an understanding of, what it is you're trying to accomplish with integration, what your goals are, assess your business requirements. And then, we've got literally, tons of experts on our team that do nothing but talk about integration all day and have implemented, as Avinash mentioned, thousands of these projects. So our goal is to eliminate as much human touch point as possible for you and really help you streamline your business.
Well, Connor, Avinash, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Jason.
This has been another episode of the MSTW podcast. My thanks once again to Connor and Avinash for joining me. For more information on DBSync's bidirectional pre-built integration templates for Dynamics 365, as well as other customizable integration options, check out the links in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, reach out by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, you can follow us at MS Dynamics World on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.